Hi, I am Tony Russo, and you're listening to Funeral Service Insider, the podcast. Conversations worth having about death care and end-of-life care. This is a great show. I'm very excited about it. I'm speaking with Jess Wakefield. She is a funeral director and also a principal at EverIs, which is a company born from essentially the need for a conservation forest to have an operational funeral home attached to it. It's a cool story. And it's not even the coolest thing that we get to talk about this week. We touch on what's going to be my, theme for the next month or so, influencers in quotes in funeral service, and also how funeral directors can kind of walk that line between what they're used to and what they feel tradition wants from them, and also what the current market also kind of expects. Lots of great stuff. I can't wait for you to hear the conversation. As a matter of fact, we're going to get it started right now after these words from our friends at NGL. Head to the National Guardian Life Insurance Company booth at this year's NFDA convention in Chicago to meet keynote speaker and pianist Felipe Gomez. Plus, be on the lookout for a big musical surprise as you head into the exhibit hall. For over 116 years, NGL has focused on providing pre-need insurance that hits all the right notes. Stop by booth 1639, that's 1639, October 26th through 29th to learn more. So I started following your progress with Better Place Forests, then with EverIs, and there's all sorts of stuff that we're going to get to. But before we talk about that, I want to get you into funeral service. So how did you find yourself in funeral service, and how did you find yourself eventually connecting with Better Place?
That's a good story. I started in the funeral industry back in 2007. I was working at a nursing home while going to school for my bachelor's degree, which is in environmental chemistry, which has nothing to do with what I do now. And I worked the graveyard shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I was kind of the team that was there when most people were passing, because believe it or not, we pass mostly at night, especially in a nursing home setting, because it's quiet and everybody's kind of, doing their own thing.
Right.
And so I got to know the local funeral director in our community there. And over time, he was like, I think you'd be really good over on my side. So you should come work for me. I'll pay you more. And I was like, oh, okay. Thinking more money because I'm, young and in college and paying bills. And I went over there and started as just a removal technician and just kind of helping out at services as needed. And then slowly over time, I was like, I really like this. And he was like, well, why don't you think about going to mortuary school? And I was like, oh, okay. So I started looking. And at the time, I was living in Washington State, and there really wasn't a program that was accredited in Washington at that point. And I did not have the ability to just pick up and move to go to school either. But I didn't want to do something online. And so when I learned that the program at Lake Washington Tech was opening up, but had to go through its accreditation process, I waited till the first class kind of went through to see how that's going. And then ended up registering and was part of the second group that graduated. I honestly fell in love with it. And that was forever ago, it feels like, almost 17 years. So it kind of came into it in a weird way. I didn't, not a family legacy thing. It's not, I just I love taking care of people and being there for people when things get difficult. And it just seemed like a really good fit. And here we are.
And now you said that you eventually went to work for SCI.
Yes.
And, I know that the corporate world can be divisive, especially among funeral directors. But many of the people that I've spoken to have been happy with their upward mobility, if nothing else, at SCI.
Yeah. I'm very adamant that there is a spot for everyone. And I think corporate funeral homes are great for people who want to climb a career ladder and continue to get more experience and more leadership training and more management training. That's not to say you can't get that at a funeral home that's family owned
Mm.
because you can, but it's a little less likely. You also have a lot of more mobility in the fact that, like, if you decide one day you want to pick up and move to Colorado, you can.
And they'll
So,
find a place for you
and
pretty
they'll
quick.
help you find a place that, is needing help. So I'm never going to be that person who's going to bash either one because there are pros and cons to every side. It's really more about what the individual's looking for and
Right.
what's important to you, right? So if you're very much mobility and growth and career building and like wanting a career that's going to continuously get bigger and different and next steps into leadership and more management experience, then corporate's probably more your jam. But if you're a funeral director who just loves funeral directing and loves working with families, family owned might be perfect too. It just depends on what you're looking for.
How did you come to end up with Better Place? Because that's just in the recent year or two, right?
Yeah, so I was working at an SEI location out here in California, and I took my team out to the Better Place Forest location that's here kind of in our area. It's about an hour and a half drive from our funeral home. And my team and I fell in love with it. And I kind of got to know the leadership team because they are also kind of in our same community. They're like 2 neighborhoods down. So we started talking more and more about like the funeral experience and the like funeral needs and how it all works. And they were finding that like maybe Better Place Forest team doesn't have a lot of funeral knowledge on like how the industry really works
Mhm.
because they were struggling to get more funeral homes to know who they are and what they're doing. Consumer wise, people know who they were, but in the funeral space, we were kind of not really aware of what they were doing. And they'd been around for almost 8-10 years by then. So that was kind of a big eye opener when I was
Yeah.
like, so I've been in the green space for like 5-6 years now, and I didn't know you were here. So we had that conversation, and it was a slow overtime experience of just kind of a lot of conversations and talking and getting together. And then eventually they were like, so we think you would really be helpful for us on our team. And I was like, oh, well, it'd be kind of nice to do something a little different. I mean, still in the same vein as funeral service. But then I kind of transitioned and moved in with them, leaving SCI after 13 years, which was moving from a corporate position to like a company like this was eye-opening. I mean, because it's so much smaller and everybody knows everybody and everyone does everything. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot of new skills that I did not have before. And I've loved every minute of it.
Just because of something you said one of their forests. Are there multiple forests in California?
We have 4 in California.
Ah.
Yeah. So we have Mendocino, which is like our Northern California coastal. It's in the redwoods. It's gorgeous. We have Santa Cruz, which is kind of our Bay Area redwood forest. We have one outside of Yosemite, which is a little bit different totally different trees. And then we have one in Southern California at Lake Arrowhead as well.
What you discovered as we talked before in the pre-interview was that there was kind of a disconnect between what you could do at Better Place and what people
Yeah.
wanted. And so tell me the story of EverIs.
Yeah, so EverIs was founded from the just sheer discovery of families who are working with us to do pre-planning for their memorial trees, asking, can I also pre-plan my cremation through you? And for the longest time, we've had to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, we have a lot of partner funeral homes in an area that we can point you to, but we aren't currently offering anything like the cremation itself. Slowly, as we talked more and more about it, we were like, but why aren't we? Why can't we?
Right.
We could. So we've decided that Evers is going to be that. So we created a separate division of our company. We kind of transitioned the forest into a nonprofit setup and then moved all of our strength of like building that network piece over to our Everest side. And now we are creating that digital funeral home experience that is extremely high touch, but also you're not physically having to come into a funeral home space to make those arrangements for cremation.
And it's rare that I talk to someone who talks actually faster than I do. So I'm going to say it's EverIs, the word ever and the word is. Bec- and what was that process like though? Like because you had to decide what you were going to do and what you weren't going to do. And how did you guys work that out?
Ooh, that was a lot of brain dumping of asking people who have been through the cremation experience through many, many companies, interviewing a ton of people, kind of talking about our own experiences as a team. Like, what have you been through? What have you done? What was good? What was bad? I have my own personal preferences being in the industry for 15 plus years. So I definitely had my full stop. We're not doing that. Thoughts too. And so as we're kind of putting it all together on the whiteboard and like, doing your mind dump, it became very clear that we wanted something that was digital forward. We wanted something that didn't force or require anyone to come in or physically have to like be present in a space. We wanted something that was flexible, extremely transparent. We don't want anybody walking away and being like, what just happened? Like, did I get everything? Did I not do
Wow.
everything? What what steps are left to do? Those are all things that when we were talking to families that came up, like it was unclear when I left the arrangement, like, did
Right.
I have stuff I still had to do? Did we buy the urn? Did we not get I don't remember what we did. And I think that stems from a lot of the times I think arrangers and funeral directors forget that when people are grieving, our capacity for like retaining information at that point in time is very low. And so if you walk out of an arrangement and you've just lost somebody and everything was verbal, you're going to call like the very next day and be like, "So did
What did I
did
say?
did we get everything done? Like what did I do? What did
Right.
we do?" And so I definitely wanted to make sure that that wasn't something that was occurring. And so the way that we've got it all set up is very open communication. So everything gets followed up with written out instruction of like what occurred, what still needs to be done, and just making sure that no one ever feels like they don't know what's going on.
So I have done a million stories of people who started funeral companies because they wanted to do something online and weren't able to. But none of them have been funeral directors, or very few of them. It's usually like, I have this technical solution. Now I need a funeral director so I can start a company. I don't know how many funeral directors I've turned to that I've spoken with that did that backwards jump. That's like, okay, a space isn't going to work for us. Let's do it online. So I
Mhm.
I guess it's a dumb question to ask, but like, how do you like? It took a little bit of unthinking, I guess, on your part to be open to this going backwards. Like, you weren't like, okay, well, now we need to find a building if we're going to have a funeral home.
Yeah. I think because of the fact that I'm West Coast first and foremost, so we are
Right.
extremely high cremation rate, and the fact that I've noticed the trend since especially since COVID, more and more people are like, "Do I really need to come in? Do I need to come in?" With cremation families, "Do I really need to come in?" That was always the question, and I'm like, "No, I can send everything to you via email," but it was never very smooth or easy. It was kinda clunky because I can send it to you via email, but do you really know what you're doing? They're
Right.
kind of sorta going through it. They've got a GPL, which, let's be honest, GPLs are not the most user-friendly things to read. And so when we came to this point of like, we're doing this, we want it to be very digital heavy, do we need a funeral home? And I was like, if we're focusing on cremation, I would say the answer is no. So we can partner and we will be partnering with multiple different venues in our area that can host memorial events,
Right.
but we don't need the space to do that. We can point you in the right direction to make that happen and in your budget range and what kind of theming you're looking for. But we don't have to have that to make this work.
And as far as the technical side of it, you just grabbed someone and said, "Make me this." Was there someone? Did you do it?
Oh,
How do you build a virtual funeral home? How does one build a
we've
virtual?
got a really great team on our hands. So the Better Place Forest team is extremely tech heavy already.
Mm.
And so when we started talking about it, it was very much, yeah, that's we can do that. We can do that. I'll send, so we've been going through that process of proofing a lot of website pages.
Right.
But that part was probably the easier part. I think the hardest part so far has been just really kind of to get a little bit of a better understanding of how to make the process so simple that anyone can do it without feeling stressed or pressured in any way, shape, or form. Because that's the one thing I've always been against is the upsell and the pressure.
Yeah, and for me, one of the intimidating things about doing something important, because now you can do important things online. And when you do
Oh,
something
yeah.
important online, you're always like, God, I hope I don't go to jail, you know?
Yeah, no, that's not really an issue. And so one of the things is like, yes, our process is very digital forward, but you're going to be meeting with us virtually. So like, we're going to connect with you. We're going to see, we're going to talk to you. We're not just going to, here, click a bunch of shopping cart items. It's not Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not doing that. We wanted to make sure that there was some touch points with human beings so that it wasn't just an AI experience, because that is not our goal, because I don't think AI can replace the human interaction in this humanistic experience, right? So we want to make sure that every person feels seen and heard through that process as well.
Join Kates-Boylston on November 12th for the Advances in Funeral Innovations Detroit Conference. This is a must-attend event for funeral professionals ready to embrace the future of funeral service. The event brings together renowned industry leaders for expert-led presentations and engaging discussions designed to help you stay ahead of emerging trends, sharpen your marketing strategies, streamline your operations, and deliver more personalized, meaningful services. Plus, you'll have the opportunity to network with fellow professionals, exchange ideas, and gain fresh perspectives that can elevate your business. Speakers include Danielle Burmeister, Vice President of Marketing Communications at Homesteaders Life Company, presenting Maximizing Team Performance Through Accountability and Alignment. Will Bischoff, Senior Vice President of Strategic Markets for Homesteaders Life Company, will present The Funeral Finance Roadmap, Strategies to Fund What's Next. Stephanie Castagnier-Dunn, Chief SBA Revenue Office, Phoenix SBA, a community bankshare company, will present The Silver Tsunami, The Coming Wave of Business Transactions. Matt Van Drimmelen, owner and founder of Full Circle Aftercare, will present Getting ROI Out of Aftercare at Your Funeral Home, Turning Compassion into Long-Term Value. Tom Cole, Vice President of Sales of Federal Eagle, and Nathan Hurst, National Sales Manager of Federal Eagle, will present Benefits from Funeral Car Innovation. Click on the link below for more information and to register. It's funny only because now that AI has been a quote thing, right? In the
Yeah.
for a while. I mean, as a professional writer, I know what it can do and what it can't do, and what it does is it does well, but what it can't do, it does so poorly as to be embarrassing. So it's and I think that sometimes people have a little bit more faith in it than they ought, because it is really good at, I could throw this interview in and it would give me a high school level essay about what you said. That would be kind of true, but it wouldn't be good. And I think that's what people are starting to see. There's like how they with photos, there's the uncanny valley, and I think that we've got like a linguistic uncanny valley happening where people are like, well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, but it feels funny. I don't know what I don't like about it, and I think that's kind of the AI uncanny valley in print.
Yeah, I would say that my favorite experience I've had with AI is that I do on LinkedIn a fun funeral Friday fact like every Friday. And so most of it's kind of knowledge that I have, but I was really lazy one day and was like, hey, Chat GPT, what would be a fun funeral fact to run for Friday? And it gave me this fact that I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. I had no idea. But I'm not dumb, so I fact checked it, and it was totally bogus. And it was not true. And I was like, dang it, I almost put that out there. Like, that's not good. So I do not rely on it heavily for anything. I let it guide and create outlines for things, but I do not let it write stuff for me at all, because it just isn't reliable.
Something that you brought up, and I want to pull on this thread, even though that I didn't prepare you for it or mean to. So today is September 5th as we are speaking, and there has been a little tiny kerfuffle online about a person named Lauren the Mortician who is giving a commencement speech, I guess, at PIMS. And a couple weeks ago, I did a story on how important it is to kind of develop a persona.
Yeah.
And so Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between, I hate the word influencer, but it's the word that
Me
people are
too. I
using.
actually
I hate it
have
almost as
this.
much as I hate content creators. So if you have anything better, I'll take it.
I do. You know what's really funny is in my hopper on my Substack, I actually have an article that I wrote that says, "Do not call me an influencer."
Right.
Because I was at a conference recently and somebody was like, "Hey, I would love to chat with you because you're becoming such an, funeral industry influencer." And I was like, "Ew, please
Yeah,
don't."
I'm
It just
respected.
creeps
I
me
want to
out.
keep it that way.
Yeah, I'm like, I've worked really hard to like build this. I don't want it to be something that's just a clickbait thing. But yeah, I think the fact that we've got social media funeral presence is huge. I unfortunately feel that there are a lot of people who are becoming very popular amongst the younger generation, especially, who aren't quite as credible as some of the older people that are out there that are trying to do things too. No disrespect to Lauren. I follow her. I keep an eye on like what she's doing, and there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of there. But there's also a lot of clickbait that I don't know that it's necessary at all. I'm not a big fan of making spectacle of people's difficulties and death and dying. Like, I, I yeah, I've written quite a bit about that. When we start making a entertainment industry out of real loss, that's it. Just it kind of takes away the experience for the people that really are living it, and it really kind of rubs dirt on it. And I don't love that. So there are moments in her feed that I'm just like, "Ooh, no, thank you," and I move on.
I think maybe the larger point though is 30 years ago, probably 10 years ago, but certainly 30 years ago, I was the funeral director in my town, and everybody knew it because I was the funeral director in my town.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
now how do you become, because I think what you're doing very well, if I can compliment you through your writing as well as through some of the things that you're putting on social media, is you're saying, I am the funeral director for this place, and this is how I do my thing. It's
mhm,
not, I like it's what we would call in the media business consumer focused. No offense intended,
yeah, yeah. It's
but
true.
it's
It's true.
consumer focused and it's educational. But more important, it is how you establish yourself as this is what I do, and in a world where you have to have like you can't go on Instagram just for your town. I guess there's neighborhood or
Right.
whatever, but
I mean, you could, but you're not going to viral at that point, right? So You know, I have a mixed emotions about this whole thing. When I first started getting into the social media stuff as far as funeral related stuff, because I mean, let's be real, I've been in social media since it was invented because I'm in that
right,
generation that does. But I didn't really touch on anything work related at all until like I would say the last year and a half, 2 years here. And part of that is that I have a really strong belief that the stories of the people that I care for are not my stories to tell. They're not mine. I have my own experiences through them, and I have my own secondary experiences through those losses and those experiences. I mean, I've been through a lot as a funeral director that most funeral directors will probably never even see, but they're not really my stories to tell. And there's no way to tell those stories without implicating those
right,
families directly because it's like, dude, that's definitely my family. Like, there's no way to just change names. And so I just have stayed out of that. And with social media, I'm super glad that there are funeral directors and people out there that have kind of opened the door to the public to be like, look, we're not scary, weird, lurchy people.
right,
Like we're really cool people. You really want to get to know us. Like we are the party, we're the fun guys. Like you really don't know what you're missing if you don't have a friend that's a funeral director.
right.
But I think that there's that borderline of, okay, now we've taken it too far. And I do see some of that starting to happen.
I accidentally wound up where I was going anyway. One of the things that you did write about, you had a series that was openly a manifesto. And can you tell me why? Well, I mean, yeah, all right. Tell me why you you wrote it, but how you conceived of it and how you brought. I'll put a link to it in the show notes because I read every one. I thought they were fantastic. How you broke that series out and why you felt that you wanted to kind of start with that.
Ooh, yeah. It's all my grievances and my frustrations. Honestly, that's where it started. Um, I kind of sat down one day and I was like, if I could start this profession over again, erase all the history that we have, what would I want it to look like? And it was all of the things that are kind of listed in the manifesto, right? So extremely open, very non-siloed experiences, meaning that when you have someone that's been diagnosed with some kind of terminal disease, you have your hospice and your palliative team. Great, they're wonderful. You have a doula that comes in and kind of helps with that too. The funeral home knows the doula, knows the hospice team, and we've all are talking to each other through that process so that as you transition onto the next chapter of adventures and you pass away, you have a very seamless experience all the way through. And once we get to that point where someone has passed, then we introduce in somebody that has experience in grief. And when you create a very seamless experience like that, the family never ever feels that hiccup or that loss or that, I don't want to say loss because they're still going to lose people. That's not a thing, but that loss of where the hell am I and what is going on?
Yeah.
There's going to be somebody there to hold your hand. Whereas now I feel like it's very disjointed. Like hospice is there, the person passes, you immediately get transitioned to the funeral home. The funeral home has no idea what the history is. They don't know like how any of that process went for you because we don't. And then once that's done, we kind of end our thing with you. And then we might have like a follow-up program that sends a few messages or a card on the holidays. And then you have to hunt out your own grief help. And so it's so disjointed that it doesn't need to be. Like if we all just kind of work together, it would create such a more beautiful experience for humanity in general. And that's kind of where it started, was me just being like, this could be so much better if we just took away our concepts of they took our job. Funeral directors feel that way about doulas. And I'm like, do you even know what a doula does? Because they do not want your job.
Right.
They don't want your job. Like I don't. And funeral directors are so protective of their space. And I get it. I get it. Working in states that were funeral director licensed, mortician licensed, and then now being in California, which has an arranger system. Yeah, I could see where you would feel that like your licensing is not really have as much value and hold as it could in other states. But that doesn't mean your knowledge base and what you're doing for your profession and what for the families you're working for is any less.
So I'm sorry, I'm sitting here nodding like I'm at church. Um, one of the conversations that we are not going to have now, but then I think is definitely worth putting in people's minds because it's certainly worth having in the future is this industry is under such radical change, and I just because it's in my head, I'm working on a feature right now where I've been an endorser of doulas. I'm a fan of it, but I also I think it's, especially from a funeral director's point of view, there's a difference between getting your, doula license from Vistaprint and going through a process. And that's the only place where it's kind of nerve-wracking to me, which is why, my advocacy has always been for funeral homes to either hire doulas or have a doula on staff. More and more young people are becoming doulas after they get their funeral director.
Yep. Yeah. And I kind of going to reference this back to when we started having funeral directors licenses, people didn't have funeral directors license either. Anybody who worked in a place
furniture maker,
furniture maker, cabinet maker, the local dentist, like it didn't matter. Like you could be a funeral director too. And there was no licensing requirements. And that slowly became a thing. And I think we're at the infancy of end of life doulas. Like we're very early in this, yes, they've been around for like 20 years, but that in the grand scheme of things, they haven't been popular conversation until like the last 5 years or so. And so I think that we're in the infancy of that. The other part of that is I'm an advocate for like a license in that space too, and not for the sake of, charging people to have a license and, monitoring their work, more along the lines of once it becomes a licensed experience that can be vetted, insurance companies that can then cover that cost. Whereas right now they cannot because it's a fully out-of-pocket experience because there's no way to vet that person knows what they're doing.
Yes.
So I think that eventually the license will come against all the wishes of a lot of doulas that I know. But
and good doulas. I've spoken with
and very good ones. Yeah. Yes, very good ones. Because and it's a conversation that I think is important to have because as a funeral director who went through the schooling and paid the money and did the thing and pays the licensing fees for 2 different states right now every year, I would say that I get it. I understand why you're like, I don't want to do that, because it is a cost and it is a thing. And a lot of doulas that are practicing right now do it on a pro bono, almost donation basis. And so they're not really making any money at it. But wouldn't it be cool if they could?
Right.
And that's where I turn the page on them a little bit, because they're like, I can't afford that. And I'm like, but what if you could?
What if it was a job instead of a hobby?
Instead of a hobby or a passion? Yeah. And so I'm hopeful that it comes. I really am. As much as the doula group would probably kick me for it, I think that it's necessary, though, in a time like now, because if you can't give like true credit to what you're doing, I think that the value in it kind of dissipates.
And I'm going to run this show a little longer than normal if you've got a couple minutes for me.
Sure.
Only because we didn't get to talk about what you do at Better Place, and it was so cool when we were talking about it beforehand. So can you just describe a Better Place for us, for me, and what it looks like and how the process there works?
Yeah. So at Better Place for Us, we offer memorial trees to families. So you can pick a tree that means something to you. We got all different kinds. There's types of trees, size of trees. It all varies. Once you've decided on your tree, you have the access and ability to place cremated remains at that tree. And we are very different in the way that we never break ground in our forests. So we create a nest around the base of the tree, which folds in the cremated remains or ashes into that kind of debris and soil that was from the forest. We also, when we're mixing our cremated remains, utilize a 2 parts soil from our forests and 1 part cremated remains. So it's kind of becomes a very large amount of product that you're placing at the base of that tree. But what happens is that over time, it slowly starts to percolate and become part of the forest floor versus us putting a hole in the ground and placing it there. So it is a little different than most people expect when they first start talking to us, because we do not bury anything. And then we do have the ability for you to place memorial markers at your tree as well. So you have like a brass marker that we do, kind of very similar to the U.S. geological symbols that you'll see on trails. Very similar. The other part of the experience that I personally like is that we don't limit how many people you can put at a tree. So if you want your tree to be a generational family tree, like your own like small mausoleum space in a way, you can. We don't limit that. So the only limit we have is that we really try to keep it under 35 pounds of remains per year. But outside of that, if you have, 4 generations you want to place in your tree, you can, which is super cool.
And I also would like to hear about the scattering gardens, or what you have, scattering meadows?
Oh, yeah.
I forget.
They're scattering groves. Right. So the scattering groves are kind of our entry point. We had a lot of people that were like, I love this and I want to be part of the forest, but I don't know that a tree is a price point that I want to do. Or they just, didn't really see the need for a tree because they're like, I just want to be in the forest. And I'm like, we got you. So what we did is we created a spreading grove, which is a little bit more of a meadow experience kind of between the trees. And so we create little nests in the space between, like, it's a grove. I mean, right. Let's be real. So like, you've got trees kind of in a circle-ish space, and then you got this spot that doesn't seem to have any trees growing and grows a lot of foliage, but that's about it. And so we utilize that space for people as well as kind of an entry point into the forest space. It's a really cool experience. The only difference there is that we kind of assign you a spot in that space so that we're not creating like a very messy look, because that doesn't help. And so the other part that's kind of the one thing that I find that is a little more challenging in that space is that when we do that, we don't guarantee that if you come back next year and want to play somebody else, that they could be next to each other, because it'll just depend on like how the space has been used in between the two and like where the next ability space really is lying. And so it isn't an entry point. But we find that a lot of people, when they come out and see it and like really get into the forest, that they end up going towards a tree anyway, because you have a little bit more control over what is around you and what you can place there. And if you're looking to place pets, we don't do them in the groves. We only do them at trees.
And that really is, it's not all I have for you, but it's reasonably asking of your time. But is there something that you wanted to say and didn't get a chance to, or something I should have asked and it didn't even occur to me to ask?
I don't think so. I don't believe so. I think you did great.
Well,
Thanks,
my pleasure, and thank you so much for your time. Head to the National Guardian Life Insurance Company booth at this year's NFDA convention in Chicago to meet keynote speaker and pianist Felipe Gomez. Plus, be on the lookout for a big musical surprise as you head into the exhibit hall. For over 116 years, NGL has focused on providing pre-need insurance that hits all the right notes. Stop by booth 1639, that's 1639, October 26th through 29th to learn more. So in future episodes, we are going to continue to explore this notion about funeral directors on social media and how they can use it to reach their communities and how they can use it to help educate. And if you have an opinion about that, well, I'm sure you have an opinion about that, but if you would like to share your opinion, you can do it by reaching out to me in the show notes. There is an email, and I would love to hear your take on it, whatever it happens to be. This is a conversation that genuinely isn't just worth having, but it's necessary for how things are going to shake out in funeral service going forward. Also in the show notes, there will be links to Jess's manifesto, which is great, and her Substack in general is always a fantastic read. It's one of the reads I don't miss. I can highly recommend it. Also, we'll have a link to her LinkedIn if you want to check out those Friday posts. Funeral Service Insider, the podcast, is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. We would love it if you followed us. That way you can get updates whenever we put out a show. We've got some great stuff coming up in the near future, and this is the best place to find out about it. And that will do it for this time. We will catch you next week on Funeral Service Insider, the podcast.